My name is Daniel Mercer, and at 69 years old, I believed I understood the meaning of trust better than most people. I had spent 4 decades designing bridges and public buildings, creating structures that could withstand storms, earthquakes, and the slow wear of time. Yet I never imagined that the strongest foundation in my life, my family, would be the one to crack without warning. The morning everything changed began with an act that looked like love. My son, Ethan Mercer, drove me to the airport before sunrise. The streets were quiet, painted gold by the first rays of daylight. He smiled more than usual, joked about how I deserved a vacation, and insisted on carrying my suitcase even though I told him I could manage perfectly well. At the entrance to the terminal, he handed me a first-class ticket for a luxury resort in Hawaii. "You've worked hard your entire life, Dad," he said warmly. 10 days with no responsibilities, just relax." His concern seemed genuine. He hugged me tightly before whispering, "Call me as soon as you land, I'll be waiting." I smiled, thanked him, and watched him disappear into the crowd. He never looked back. He believed I was about to board that plane. He was wrong. Instead of checking in, I walked back outside, ordered a car, and gave the driver an address Ethan had never known existed. The destination wasn't a hotel, it wasn't another airport, it was the office of my attorney. The decision hadn't come easily. Only 3 days earlier, I had discovered something that shattered every illusion I had about my son. But to explain why I chose not to board that flight, I have to go back several years, to the woman who built my life alongside me. Her name was Claire Mercer. We met in 1984 while working for the same engineering company in Seattle. She was brilliant, patient, and possessed the rare ability to calm every storm that entered a room. Where I analyzed every detail, Claire trusted her instincts. Together we built more than buildings. We built a marriage. We bought a beautiful 2-story home overlooking the water, planted maple trees in the front yard, and raised our only child beneath that roof. Every decision we made was shared. Every challenge became easier because we faced it together. Even after Ethan grew up and moved away to build his own career, Claire and I remained inseparable. Then came the diagnosis: pancreatic cancer. The doctors fought. Claire fought harder. For nearly a year, she refused to let illness define her. She still laughed at my terrible jokes, still insisted on decorating the house for every holiday, and still reminded me to stop worrying so much. 2 weeks before she passed away, she called me into our bedroom. She looked fragile, but her eyes remained steady. "Promise me something," she whispered. I squeezed her hand. "Anything. No matter what happens. Keep the house in your name. Protect what we've built. Don't let anyone pressure you into changing that." I nodded. "I promise." She smiled faintly before adding another request. "And don't give up on Ethan. He'll need you." Those were among the last clear words she ever spoke. I kept both promises, or at least I believed I had. After Claire's funeral, Ethan returned from Chicago, where his technology startup had begun struggling financially. He stayed with me for several weeks. He cried beside his mother's grave. He hugged me often. He seemed lost. When he asked for financial help to launch another business, I didn't hesitate. I transferred nearly $400,000 from savings Claire and I had spent decades building. He thanked me with tears in his eyes. "I'll make you proud, Dad." I believed him. Months became years. Ethan moved back into my house temporarily while expanding his real estate company. Temporary slowly became permanent. At first, I enjoyed having him around. We shared breakfast every morning. We watched football together on weekends. Sometimes we even laughed the way we used to when he was a teenager. It felt as though life had finally begun healing. Looking back now, I realize something painful. Not every peaceful season is built on honesty. Sometimes silence hides cracks that grow wider every single day, and the first crack appeared on an ordinary Tuesday morning. As I walked into the kitchen before sunrise, I noticed a perfume drifting through the hallway. It wasn't Claire's familiar cedar fragrance. This scent was younger, sweeter, completely unfamiliar. I stopped walking. The house was supposed to contain only my son and me. So why did it smell as though another woman had spent the night there? I stood motionless, coffee growing cold in my hands. For the first time in my life, a feeling I couldn't explain settled deep inside my chest. Something was wrong. I simply didn't know how wrong it truly was. From that morning forward, I began noticing details I had ignored for months. The unfamiliar perfume returned 2 days later. It lingered outside Ethan's bedroom long after he had supposedly left for an early client meeting. When I walked past the hallway, the sweet floral scent still floated in the air, refusing to disappear. I paused outside his closed door for only a second before continuing downstairs. I wanted to believe there was an innocent explanation. Maybe a client had stopped by. Maybe a friend had borrowed something. Maybe I was imagining problems because grief had made me suspicious. Claire had always balanced my tendency to overthink. Without her, every unanswered question echoed louder than it should. So I stayed silent. Silence, however, has a way of inviting deception. The following week, I returned home much earlier than Ethan expected. A doctor's appointment ended ahead of schedule, and I decided to surprise him by bringing lunch from his favorite deli. As I turned into the driveway, I noticed a bright blue convertible parked beside his SUV. I had never seen the car before. Before I could step out of my own vehicle, the convertible reversed quickly and disappeared down the street. By the time I reached the front door, Ethan was already waiting. "You're home early," he said with an easy smile. The appointment didn't take long. "Everything okay?" "Perfectly fine." His shirt was slightly wrinkled, and his hair looked as though he had hurriedly run his fingers through it. He stepped aside, allowing me inside. Nothing appeared unusual. No extra shoes, no purse, no evidence that anyone else had been there. Yet the perfume remained. Faint. Almost impossible to notice. But it was there. That evening, Ethan acted completely normal. He cooked dinner, asked about my health, talked excitedly about several expensive waterfront homes he hoped to sell before summer. Anyone watching us would have seen a caring son enjoying dinner with his aging father. Only I knew something didn't fit. A week later, another small incident deepened my doubts. We were sitting in the living room watching television when Ethan's phone buzzed on the coffee table. He reached for it immediately. Not quickly enough. For less than 2 seconds, the screen remained visible. One name flashed across it. Olivia. No last name, just Olivia. He picked up the phone and stood. "I've got to take this," he said casually. "Business?" He nodded. "Potential client." He walked into the kitchen and quietly closed the door behind him. I couldn't hear every word, but I did hear him laugh. It wasn't his ordinary laugh. It was softer, warmer, more intimate. When he returned several minutes later, his expression was relaxed. "Everything is all right?" I asked. "Just work." He placed the phone face down on the table before changing the subject. Again, I remained silent. That silence lasted another 12 days. Then everything changed. It was a rainy Saturday afternoon. Ethan had spent most of the morning working on his laptop in the family room while answering emails between phone calls. Around 2 o'clock, his cell phone rang. Without thinking, he stepped outside onto the patio to answer it. His laptop remained open. I wasn't trying to spy. In fact, I walked past without looking. Then the screen lit up with a new message. One sentence caught my eye before I could stop myself. I can't wait until the house is finally ours. I froze. My heart began pounding. Slowly, almost against my own will, I stepped closer. The conversation remained open. The sender's name was Olivia. Message after message filled the screen. I read them carefully. Each one struck harder than the last. Olivia wrote, "Are you sure your father won't suspect anything?" Ethan answered, "Absolutely not. He trusts me completely." Another message followed. 10 days will be enough. Once he's gone, everything becomes easier." My breathing stopped. I continued reading. "The vacation is already booked," Ethan had written earlier that morning. "First-class ticket. He'll think it's my way of thanking him for everything he's done." Olivia replied with a laughing emoji. "You're unbelievable." Then came the sentence I will never forget. "He's always grateful. That's what makes this so easy." I stared at the screen until the words blurred. The room suddenly felt smaller. Every memory of the past several years has been replayed in my mind. Every loan, every sacrifice, every excuse I had made on Ethan's behalf, every warning from friends who believed I trusted too easily. Claire had once told me that people reveal their character through small choices repeated over time. Standing there beside my son's laptop, I finally understood what she meant. The man I thought I knew no longer existed, or perhaps he never had. Outside, I heard the patio door slide open. Ethan was coming back inside. I quickly stepped away from the laptop and continued walking toward the hallway as though nothing had happened. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. "Dad," he called, "would you like some coffee?" I forced myself to answer calmly, "Maybe later." I walked upstairs, closed my bedroom door, and sat beside the window overlooking the bay. For nearly an hour, I didn't move. I simply stared at the gray sky while one painful truth settled into my mind. The vacation wasn't a gift, it was part of a plan, and somehow I had become the obstacle my own son wanted removed. That afternoon, I sat alone in my bedroom until sunset. The messages on Ethan's laptop replayed endlessly in my mind. Every sentence carried the same painful truth. The son I had trusted with my savings, my home, and my late wife's final wishes had carefully planned to remove me from his life, without ever raising his voice or showing the slightest hint of guilt. Oddly enough, I didn't cry. I had expected anger. I had expected heartbreak. Instead, I felt unsettling and calm. Perhaps there comes a point when betrayal becomes so complete that emotions simply stop fighting it. Eventually, I picked up my phone and called the one person Claire had always trusted with every legal matter. Her name was Rebecca Collins. She answered after the second ring. "Daniel, is everything all right?" "No," I replied quietly. "Not even close." For the next 30 minutes, I explained everything. The strange perfume, the unknown woman, the mysterious car, the text messages, the planned vacation. Most importantly, I repeated every word I had read on Ethan's laptop. Rebecca didn't interrupt. She listened patiently until I finished. Finally, she spoke. "I need you to do something very difficult." "I'm listening." "Act exactly as you have been." I frowned. "You want me to pretend nothing happened?" "Yes." "How long?" "Until we know everything." Her voice remained calm and professional. "If Ethan suspects you've discovered the truth, he'll destroy evidence before we can protect you." The advice made perfect sense. It also sounded impossible. "You can do this," Rebecca continued, "but you cannot confront him yet." I agreed. The following morning, I walked downstairs and prepared breakfast exactly as I always did. Bacon, eggs, coffee, fresh toast. Ethan entered the kitchen smiling. "Morning, Dad." "Morning." He poured himself coffee before sitting across from me. Feeling excited about Hawaii? I smiled. I haven't taken a real vacation in years. You deserve it. His voice sounded warm, kind, almost loving. If I hadn't read those messages myself, I would have believed every word. Over the next 2 weeks, pretending became the hardest job of my life. Every morning we shared breakfast. Every evening we discussed his business. Sometimes he even asked whether I needed anything from the grocery store. The performance was flawless. Mine had to be even better. Meanwhile, Rebecca quietly built a case. She hired a licensed private investigator named Michael Grant, a former detective with nearly 20 years of investigative experience. Michael never entered my property. Instead, he followed Ethan through public places, restaurants, parking lots, hotels, office buildings. Within days, the evidence began arriving. Photographs showed Ethan dining with Olivia at expensive restaurants. Receipts proved those dinners were paid using money connected to family accounts. Security footage placed Olivia's blue convertible outside my home on numerous occasions while I was attending medical appointments. Credit card records revealed luxury hotel reservations made under Ethan's name. Everything pointed toward the same conclusion. The relationship wasn't new. It had been happening for months. Rebecca called after every report. The evidence is getting stronger. Each conversation left me feeling older than the last, yet I continued smiling across the breakfast table. One Thursday morning, Ethan glanced up from his phone and laughed. "You seem different lately." "Oh? You look happier." I almost laughed at myself. Happier? If only he knew. "I've been sleeping better," I answered. "I'm glad." He smiled before returning to his messages. That moment taught me something important. People who lie often believe everyone else is just as easy to fool. By the end of the second week, Rebecca invited me to her office. Michael spread several photographs across the conference table. There was Ethan and Olivia holding hands outside an upscale restaurant. Another picture showed them shopping for furniture. A third captured them entering a jewelry store. Then came printed copies of financial records, unauthorized purchases, luxury gifts, hotel charges, all connected to accounts funded with my money. Rebecca folded her hands. "Legally, this is significant, but not enough. Not quite. What else do we need?" She looked directly into my eyes. "We need proof that he intended to deceive you inside your own home." I understood immediately. "The vacation." She nodded. "If he persuades you to leave while planning to take control of your property and we capture what happens afterward, his entire story collapses." "So I boarded the plane?" Rebecca smiled faintly. "No." I raised an eyebrow. "You let him believe you boarded." For the first time since discovering the truth, I felt something shift inside me. Not hope, determination. The trap wasn't meant for me anymore. It was waiting for Ethan. 3 days later, he walked into the kitchen carrying a glossy travel brochure. A luxurious Hawaiian resort covered the front. He placed it gently beside my coffee. "Dad," he said warmly, "I've got a surprise for you." Without opening the brochure, I already knew exactly what it contained. The first-class ticket, the 10-day vacation. The final step in a plan he believed would change his future forever. He smiled confidently. I smiled back. Neither of us knew that only one of us was still living inside a lie. The next morning arrived with a strange sense of calm. I packed a suitcase exactly the way Ethan expected. A few shirts, travel shoes, a light jacket. To anyone watching, I looked like a retired father preparing for the relaxing vacation his thoughtful son had arranged. Only one thing was different. Hidden inside my jacket was my phone, already configured by Rebecca's office to back up every recording and photograph automatically to a secure server. Whatever happened next could never be erased. Ethan insisted on driving me to the airport. The entire trip felt rehearsed. He talked about beaches, golf courses, seafood restaurants, and how refreshed I would feel after 10 peaceful days away from home. I nodded and smiled. Occasionally, I thanked him for his generosity. Every grateful word seemed to make him more comfortable. When we reached the terminal, he carried my suitcase inside. "I'll miss you," he said with a smile. "I'll only be gone 10 days. He laughed. "Exactly." Then he hugged me. "Call me as soon as you land." "I will." He squeezed my shoulder one final time before walking toward the parking garage, just as he had planned. He never looked back. I waited inside the terminal until his SUV disappeared from view. Then I picked up my suitcase, walked back outside, and climbed into a rideshare vehicle waiting near the pickup area. The driver glanced at me through the mirror. "Change of plans?" "You could say that." I gave him the address Rebecca had instructed me to use, not my house, but the corner 1 block away. As we drove, my phone began vibrating. "Ethan." I ignored the call. Seconds later, he called again. Then again. Rebecca had warned me this might happen. He would expect my phone to become unreachable once the airplane doors closed. Instead, it continued ringing. By the time we entered my neighborhood, Ethan had called 11 times. He knew something was wrong. I stepped out of the vehicle and thanked the driver. The morning air was quiet. Birds sang from the maple trees Claire had planted years ago. Everything looked perfectly ordinary. Until I reached my driveway. Parked beside Ethan's SUV stood the same blue convertible Michael had photographed several times before. Olivia was inside my house, exactly as Rebecca predicted. I took a slow breath and opened the recording application on my phone. The red light appeared. Recording had begun. I slipped the phone into my jacket pocket with the microphone facing outward. Then I unlocked my front door. The familiar scent of Claire's favorite candles still lingered in the entrance hall. Beneath it floated Olivia's perfume, and from the living room came music. My heart stopped. It was Claire's favorite jazz album, the same record we had danced to on the night we first moved into this house. Ethan knew what that music meant to me, yet he played it without a second thought. I quietly stepped farther inside. Laughter echoed through the room. Olivia's voice came first. "So, did he actually leave?" Ethan chuckled. "I checked the flight tracker." "You did? He should be somewhere over the Pacific by now." They both laughed. Olivia sounded relieved. "I still can't believe he fell for it." "He trusts me," Ethan replied casually. "He's always trusted me." Those words hit harder than any shout ever could. I remained hidden in the hallway, letting the recorder capture every sentence. A moment later, Olivia spoke again. "What happens next?" Ethan leaned back comfortably. "The hard part's over." "What about the house?" "It'll be mine eventually." "And then?" "We renovate," Olivia laughed. "I've always hated this place. It's like living inside a museum." Ethan laughed with her. "Exactly. He refuses to change anything." "Still obsessed with Mom?" "Completely. He even talks to her picture sometimes." Olivia became quiet. For a second, I almost feel sorry for him. Ethan shrugged. "Don't. He had his life. It's our turn now." I closed my eyes for a moment. Every word was being recorded, every lie, every cruel joke, every plan. Then Olivia noticed something hanging on the chair beside the fireplace. She picked it up. "Is this yours?" My heart sank. It was Claire's navy sweater, the one she wore during our last anniversary dinner. Ethan looked at it briefly. "No." "Throw it in the donation pile," Olivia smiled. "It doesn't suit this house anyway." That sentence cut deeper than I expected. Claire had loved that sweater. She wore it every autumn. She wore it during our final family Thanksgiving. She wore it while sitting beside the fireplace reading novels on rainy afternoons. To them, it was simply clutter. I realized then that they weren't merely planning to inherit my home. They intended to erase every trace of the woman who had built it. That was the moment my grief disappeared. In its place stood absolute certainty. I reached into my pocket and checked the blinking red light. The recording continued perfectly. Rebecca now had exactly what she needed. The trap had closed. Neither Ethan nor Olivia had any idea that every word they had spoken would soon destroy the future they had been planning together. I stepped out of the hallway and into the living room. Neither Ethan nor Olivia noticed me at first. They were too busy discussing paint colors and furniture, laughing over ideas for the future they believed was already theirs. Then Olivia looked toward the hallway. Her smile disappeared instantly. The wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered across the hardwood floor. Ethan turned. Every trace of confidence vanished from his face. Dad? For several long seconds, no one spoke. The only sound came from the jazz record still playing in the background. You, Ethan whispered. How are you here? I never boarded the plane. His face turned pale. I don't understand. I think you do. Olivia took a nervous step backward. Ethan. He ignored her. Dad, listen. This isn't what it looks like. I almost smiled. Really? You can explain why you were celebrating my departure. He opened his mouth but found no words. I heard everything, I continued calmly. Every conversation. Every plan. Every lie. He looked around the room as though searching for an escape that didn't exist. You were spying on us? No. I was protecting myself. Olivia suddenly grabbed her handbag. I think I should leave. Rebecca stepped through the still open front door before she could reach it. Behind her came Michael Grant. A uniformed police officer followed close behind. Olivia froze. Rebecca looked directly at Ethan. Good morning. His eyes widened. What is this? She calmly placed a folder on the coffee table. It contains financial records, surveillance reports, photographs, and recordings documenting your activities over the past several weeks. Ethan stared at her without speaking. Rebecca continued. This morning, your father legally recorded your entire conversation inside his own residence. She held up a small digital recorder that had synchronized with Daniel's phone. We now possess evidence confirming your intent to deceive him, misuse family assets, and manipulate his estate for personal gain. Ethan's shoulders slumped. You can't prove anything. Rebecca opened the folder. I believe we already have. She removed several photographs, restaurant receipts, hotel reservations, bank statements, images of Ethan and Olivia together. Finally, she placed printed copies of their text messages on the table. His confidence collapsed. Olivia looked at him in disbelief. You told me nobody would ever find out. He said nothing. The officer stepped forward. Mr. Mercer, I need you to remain here while we complete our investigation. Ethan looked at me desperately. Dad. For the first time in weeks, his voice sounded genuine. I made mistakes. I can fix this. I looked into his eyes, the same blue eyes Claire used to kiss goodnight when he was a little boy. The same eyes that had filled with tears at her funeral. The same eyes that had looked into mine while promising he would make me proud. You had countless opportunities to tell the truth. He lowered his head. I was desperate. No. You were greedy. The room fell silent again. Olivia quietly sat on the edge of the sofa, unable to look at anyone. Rebecca spoke softly. Daniel, the paperwork is ready whenever you are. I nodded. From my briefcase, I removed a document. It officially revoked every financial authority Ethan had over my accounts. A second document transferred management of my estate into a protected trust supervised by independent trustees. A third formally instructed that the house would become a charitable foundation after my death, providing scholarships for engineering students who could not afford college. No one would inherit it. No one would profit from it, especially not through betrayal. I signed each page carefully. Then I handed the folder back to Rebecca. "It's done," she said. I felt an enormous weight lift from my shoulders. Ethan stared at the signed documents. You're leaving me with nothing?" I answered quietly. "I already gave you everything that truly mattered. My trust, my love, my forgiveness. You chose to throw those away. Money was never what separated us. Character was." Tears finally filled his eyes. "I'm sorry." Perhaps he truly meant it. Perhaps he simply regretted being caught. By then, the difference no longer mattered. Michael escorted Olivia outside to speak with investigators. The police officer remained with Ethan while Rebecca organized the paperwork. I walked slowly through the house. Every photograph of Claire still hung exactly where she had placed it. The maple trees outside swayed gently in the afternoon breeze. Sunlight poured through the living room windows, warming the floor where we had danced decades earlier. For the first time since Claire died, the house felt peaceful again. Not because justice had been served, not because my son had finally faced the consequences of his choices, but because I had finally honored the promise Claire asked me to make. She told me to protect what we had built. For years, I believed that meant protecting Ethan. Now I understood the deeper meaning. Sometimes protecting a family's legacy means refusing to let betrayal become part of it. As I stood before Claire's photograph, I smiled gently. "I kept my promise," I whispered. Outside, the front door closed. A painful chapter of my life had ended. The future remained uncertain, but for the first time in a very long while it belonged to me, not to fear, not to deception, and not to the people who mistook kindness for weakness.